Hello, and welcome to Gentle Yoga at Noon. I'm Jeani, your guide for the next hour. We're here in the ACC community room, and today's practice is a continuation of our hip openers we've been doing for the last week or so. If you have blocks nearby, if you need the chair so that you can kind of, walk your hands down on the chair or onto the blocks as you make your way down to the floor, we'll be doing a number of different kinds of squats. So that's just something to consider. So we'll start at the back of the mat, and make sure this is here. Having a little water nearby is a good thing. It's been kind of on the warmer side. And let's just arrive at the back of the mat. You don't have to change the quality of your breath, but you do want to feel how you're arriving. Feet are about hips distance apart underneath the hips. Just notice if you need a gentle bend to the knees. In your mountain, our home base position, you may find our first iteration of mountain looks a little different than our final one. We'll just eventually start lengthening through our legs, feel a little more rooted, a little longer, a little stronger mountain as we return each time. And as you arrive, just quieting down, noticing how the breath is moving through the nose. We'll bring our left palm to rest on our chest, bring our right hand under the belly button, and start to cultivate the yogic breath. As we begin our inhales with a little more effort, see if you can feel at the top of the inhale, the hand on the chest lifting. A brief pause before you start that slower exhale through the nose, gently pressing in the belly button hand at the bottom of the exhale, engaging your core. The belly, the quads, stepping into the feet. And just a few more breath cycles to help facilitate the yogic breath. Let's bring the sound of the ocean to the back of the throat. You might hear something akin to fogging a mirror, an ocean wave, a deep sigh. And now your breath cycle should be a little slower, maybe about 5 to 6 seconds long. With that calmer, stronger breath, you can always reconnect to it throughout your practice, on and off the mat. We'll go ahead and bring our hands down to the sides, start bringing movement and breath together. Let's go ahead and step into our feet, into our mountain, the base. Feel that energy lifting through the legs. Maybe the legs get a little longer, up through the back, through to the crown of the head, even beyond. And as you slowly exhale, feel that energy returning to the mat, to the earth, through the body. Feel a little more rooted as you exhale, fully engaging the core, lengthening through the legs. With the next inhale, we'll start to feel the center of gravity at the base of our feet move towards our toes. The body is still kind of long, and as we reach our final edge of that breath, we'll find the tipping point, hopefully, and then use the next breath to slowly feel the center of gravity shift towards the heels until you get that tipping moment there as well. Use the next couple of breaths just to find that heel to toe alignment. Nice, easy, slow yogic breath. And then we'll meet at center, somewhere near to the heels. Center should feel somewhat above the arches. Dipping into your mountain once more, you can reset. Inhale nice and tall, feel that energy upwards. And as you're energized upwards, we're just going to exhale slowly, roll the weight at the soles of the feet towards the right edge. Body is still kind of nice and long. Fully exhaled here. Let's go ahead and inhale up to center. For a 3-part breath, exhale to either side, or you can use a 2-part breath and just inhale from one side, exhale to the other, whatever works for you. But find that horizontal mapping at the soles of our feet. Once you get the tipping points at left and right edge, we'll meet back at center. Feel that right above the arches, near to the heels. You can give yourself a gentle bounce. You can give yourself just a bend to the knees. Lift the toes slightly, lift the heels slightly. Find that center once more. And inhaling, we're lengthening just a little longer through the legs, a little taller through the body. Feel a string at the crown of the head lifting all the way up. And then we're going to start making circles with the entire body as one long unit. But imagine the circles at the ankles, getting a little wider as we find the perimeter eventually of the feet. And you might find it a little smooth and circular, elliptical. You might find it a little choppy, a little more square. But whatever you do, when you're done finding the edge, we're going to tighten in those circles. We're going to come back to center. Imagine water going down a drain when you come right back to your home base. And reset the mountain once more. If you need, bend the knees, lift up on the heels, toes, resetting once more. See if you can feel more of an internal rotation of the legs so that when you step into your base, you feel like a lengthening, more of an alignment of the hips over the knees, over the ankles. And then we're going to go ahead and move on up. We're shifting weight now with our feet about hips distance apart. Oh, sorry, we need to go in the opposite direction. One more inhale, nice and tall. Feel that lengthening at the crown of the head, and make the opposite direction of those same circles at the ankles. And this second round might find a little, a different journey. Maybe it is choppy, or maybe it's just as smooth. But do one more side just to balance it out, and we'll come right back to our center, hopefully. And we'll reset our mountain once more. Nice and long, tall. We're moving to the hips now, adding a little more of the major joint movements. So start by just tipping weight from one foot to the other, side to side. And as you become more and more lifted or weighted on one side, you can lift the ball of the opposite foot and start pivoting the toes out a little bit. It should just be a natural widening at about the toes as you start to make more and more of that shifting of the weight from left to right. And then see if you can start to bring movement at the shoulders and the hips. And you're kind of giving an opposite ringing action, if you can imagine that. As your torso goes to one side, lift up the toes, balls of the feet lift with the torso facing that side. You're gently pivoting on the heels. You're just trying to find some movement with just that eventual shifting of the weight that turns from side to side to more of a swiveling action. And the torso at the shoulders, giving just a little more momentum to move the arms on its own. And just depending on how big your movements get, you might have your arms tapping front and side at some point. You might have a deep bend to the knees. Try to get some movement and feel it gently, especially around the knees. And then we'll let that momentum peter out and just sort of float on back to your home base. Tuck in those toes, heel to toe alignment, shift from heel to toe. See if you can find that top to bottom, left to right, center. That should hopefully be right above the arches, near to the heels. And now we can think about lifting all the way up, pressing down into our legs, internally rotating the thighs, feeling as if we've got more of the, the big pad under the big toe, and the inner arches, feeling more of the mat so that you have an entire hold at the soles of the feet. We're not going to hyperextend the backs of the knees. Keep that gentle bend to the knees, but see if you can stack the hips over the knees, over the ankles. And now we're going to bring those shoulders, rolling them up, back, and down, and hopefully those will sit right on top of the hips. And as we move up to the torso, palms facing forward, gentle tuck of the chin. Imagine once more that string at the crown of the head lifting up, inhaling. We're going to bring the shoulders upwards, exhale, roll them back, and let them melt on down. The bottom points of the shoulder blades tucking into the mid-back. A total of 4 breath cycles to help us lift up on the inhale. Exhale, roll them back and down. Let that movement hopefully be just in the shoulders, Let the bottom portion of your body be a steady support, a column of support, a center, while the shoulders get some nice rotation and release. Now we're going to have a second set, a second round. This time it goes up on the inhale, forward on the exhale. And again, 4 breath cycles worth of shoulder lifts up, but this time rolling them forward on the exhale. Notice if there are changes in the base of your center. Try to rebalance, keep them evenly supporting you. Go ahead and shake out anything in your hands, maybe lifting up one foot and the other, resetting our mountain once more. And then we can inhale, feel a little longer and taller in our mountain, gentle tuck of the chin, and feeling the crown of the head lifting towards the ceiling. All we have to do is exhale, let the right ear just dip towards the right shoulder. Inhaling, we might even lift up at the sternum, at the chest. Exhale, just turn the gaze until it stops. Palms hopefully facing forward to help keep the shoulders away from the ears. And we're just giving ourselves 4 breath cycles here as well, just to see if we can land our eyes at the rightmost of our vision. Just release through the left side of our neck. If you have a deep sigh, a yawn that occurs, oh, that's just a nice added benefit. By the last exhale, engage the core fully, and then bring the eyes, the gaze, the crown of the head lift all the way up with the top of the inhale. So all you have to do is exhale over to the other side. Inhale for lift, exhale to turn the gaze. Giving ourselves a total of 4 breath cycles here. Seeing if our eyes can rest at our left shoulder, maybe in front, maybe on it, maybe at the back of it, by that last exhale. And then we can bring the eyes and the gaze and the top of the head completely back up at the top of the inhale. So you can just float the eyes downward, gently tilting the crown of the head towards the ceiling, landing at the top of the mat, about 6 feet in front of you. Lots of space between the chin and the chest. A nice, long, gently tilting diagonal of the neck. Shoulders still lifting up, still hopefully rounded back. Shoulders all the way down to the heels, nice and long support column. And with each yogic breath, feeling that release right at the base of the neck, all the way to the crown of the head. Palms can face forward too. Just relax the arms, everything nice and heavy from the shoulders down. After that last exhale, give yourself an inhale back up to the midline. Bring the eyes back up, past the midline, and see if you can see somewhat above you. Once you can, you don't have to crane the neck. We just want to have a nice long neck. See if you can use the next 4 breath cycles to open up the mouth, the jaw, the brow line. Make the earlobes feel heavy. And those deep breaths in might even find some space in the rib cage, sideways, collarbones upwards. On the exhale, still feeling that rootedness all the way back down to the feet. Engaged core at the bottom of the exhale. And after the 4 breath cycles, we can inhale or exhale the eyes back to the midline. And then shake out any residual activation. Might be in your arms, might be in the shoulders, might be in the feet and the legs. And then we'll return to our mountain, just a little longer, a little taller, a little stronger this time. See if we can just lengthen, pressing down into the legs, internally, gently internally stepping into the big pads of our toes, all points of the arches, the soles of the feet feeling the mat. We're going to reach our fingers downwards, and as we're reaching, energizing downwards, inhale, extend the arms up. And here, don't forget to engage the core. We're going to lift up even and reach upwards one last time, and then exhale. Engage the core. Start to stick the tailbone back. We're starting to hinge the pelvic bowl backwards. And then with a straight back, just come on down. It can be a nice slow movement, and then you can speed it up as you'd like. You can bring the hands down, let them float down. They can come, the forearms can come to rest at the thighs. And as you're hinging at the hips, keep a bend to the knees, especially if the backs of the legs are super tight. Deeper the bend, the tighter the legs. And all we're trying to find once more is that column of support from the hips all the way to the heels, somewhere at the top of the arches. And if you want to play around with our first ragdoll of a fold, we've got about 5 breath cycles to kind of see how we're feeling in our fold. You might be here just trying to find that support from the heels down up to the hips. You want to release any hold on the upper body eventually. So you can help to facilitate that by gently swaying the hips left to right. You can press into your solid support at the soles of the feet. You can gently see if you're holding on to the weight of your head. Gently just nod your head to the left and right, forward and back. Maybe even see if you can release anything like the arms, any neck hold so that your head can kind of act like a plumb line. And with the benefit of gravity, just let nature help you with this natural traction. And release. Feel something hopefully from the tailbone down the spine and the neck to the crown of the head, just eventually allowing the chest to get a little closer to the thighs. You might have to bring down the hips a little to do that. You might be able to just continuously stay as you lengthen through the legs and relax the upper body. As we come out of our first lengthy ragdoll of a fold, we're going to slowly roll up the spine. We're engaging the core with the inhale, pressing into our feet, firming up the thighs, making sure that tailbone starts to tuck under as we press into the feet. And you can walk those arms, walk the hands up the legs if you need, but really engage the feet, the legs, the glutes even, tuck under the tailbone and lengthen through the legs. And as one vertebra stacks on top of the other, last is the head on top of the neck. You can bring up the arms. I just did that automatically. And then we'll bring the hands down, heart center if you'd like. Finally down to the sides once more. We're going in for a second fold. Reaching downward, lengthening through the legs, through our mountain, maybe a little longer, a little taller this time, and see if you've got that internal rotation, that nice engagement of the core. So we can inhale, bring the arms up, reach up if you'd like at the top, engage the core, start to hinge at the hips, and stick the butt back so you can fold at the hip line, slowly fold, float down, walk the hands down, or just allow the body to unfold on its own with the breath. And here we're going to stay about 3 breath cycles to help us work through the second fold. But now you might give yourself a little bobble of the head. See if you're holding on to that. Let your body feel the support of the hips down to the heels. You can bend one knee gently, lengthen it, maybe a little more, internally rotating the weight, feeling more of that shift right here above the ankles. You can do the same with the other leg. And finding that you're not holding on to any kind of weight with the upper body if you can. Just give yourself a good last deep inhale and exhale. And then we'll come back out with a slow roll up, or you have the choice with the inhale, nevertheless, and an engaged core to come up with a straight back. But we're pressing into our feet, inhaling, bringing the tailbone down if we need, lengthening, walking the hands up, or lifting all the way up. And at the top even, you can reach up, tucking in the tailbone, hands down, heart center. And then we'll start our walking meditation. And here we're going to press into our hands, engage the core slightly, bend the knee, hinging at the hips just slightly, so you can lift the right foot. Find that balance in the left side of your leg and lift up the foot. And you can put the heel down. You can also just put the midfoot, ball of foot, and then complete weight on there by the end of that exhale. So you can inhale, lift the left foot, and set that down. Heel or midfoot or ball of foot and toes. And if you feel a little wobbly, that's okay. Try to come back to center with pressing the hands, engaging, re-engaging the core. But we're just simply bringing one full breath cycle per step, lifting on the inhale, exhaling the foot down, stepping up one breath cycle step at a time. Oop. And at the top, we'll meet in our mountain, lengthening through the neck, legs, looking down at the fingertips, pressing into the palms. We'll inhale, watch them rise, separating the hands at the top. Exhale, engage the core. And come on down, another fold. Maybe you have the blocks nearby. Maybe they were already in your hands, but in your third fold, maybe a little deeper this time. See if you can lengthen through the legs, bring the chest a little closer to the thighs, and make sure you have that hip to heel alignment support. We're going to inhale now. Wherever your hands are, just imagine that tailbone from the hips down to the heels, just engaging your support, but also from the tailbone to the head, another support line going straight out, maybe at a 90-degree angle, maybe at a 45-degree angle, but we're lengthening through both the limbs of the lower body as well as the upper body. And fully inhaled here for our half lift. We're going to exhale, lower by just simply bending the elbows, bringing the chest closer, and you can bring your hands to either side of your feet, either on the blocks, on your hands, but we're going to bend the knees when we do so, drop the tailbone, and start stepping back. One foot, another foot, one hand, another hand, but we're bringing the legs all the way back to the back of the mat for a nice long hypotenuse and bringing the shoulders over the wrists with the inhale, and then we can bring the shins down, untuck the toes, and then with our modified high plank here, make sure that you have the body weight primarily at the lower limbs, right there at the shins, at the tops of the ankle, and the upper body over the shoulders. If you feel like you're too far forward, you can have a 90-degree angle at the wrists or maybe a little back further from that 90 degree, so it's not quite as bad. But do have those fingers nice and splayed, index and middle fingers upwards, thumbs towards the center, and see if you can get most of your palm down on the mat. We're going to untuck the toe. We're going to tuck the toes, lift up the hips with the next inhale, and then exhale. Press into those long arms, shift the hips back. And as you do so, you might find yourself at an upside down U or an upside down V. You might have your heels lifted all the way up. You do not need to lower them to the mat, but we do want to find that apex somewhere at the mid-belly, tailbone, core line there, going upwards as we're pressing down through those long, strong arms and shoulders, down to the hands, and long, strong glutes, all the way down to the heels. Maybe not touching the mat, but in those two downward movements with the one upward movement of energy at the apex. And then with the eyes, let's inhale, roll them towards the hands, keep a deep bend to the knees, and we're going to walk the hands to the back of the mat, to the fold, fully exhaled here, inhale, half lift, lengthen for that half lift, exhale back to the fold, and then inhale, engage the core, and you can come back up with a slow roll up or with a straight back, but inhaling, engaging the core, and stepping all the way back up, lifting at the top of the inhale, exhaling, hands down, heart center, nice and relaxed elbows at the rib cage. We'll go for a second walking meditation. Inhale, press into the palms, engage your core, bring standing weight to the left side of the body, lift the right foot, exhale the foot down. When you shift your body weight to the front foot, inhale the left foot up, exhale that down. A slow walking meditation as you feel that change of center with each footstep. And at the top of the mat, we'll meet in mountain, looking down at the fingertips, pressing into the palms. At the top, we'll separate our hands and exhale, hinging at the hips, keeping a bend to the knees if you need, coming down for yet another fold. Fully exhaled here. Inhale, half lift. Wherever your hands are touching, try to lengthen through the back. Lengthen through the legs. Exhale back to your fold. You can use your props, but you're just bringing one hand to either side of your feet, stepping the feet and the hands back, and then lifting this time for a high plank, nice and long for 3 breath cycles here. We're pressing into those long arms. We're finding the balls of the feet are supporting a great deal of the weight from the back, but not too much. You have that nice long hypotenuse from the heels, that long diagonal from the heels all the way to the crown of the head. And then we're going to lift up the hips. Exhale, push the hips back towards your down dog once more, and adjust the feet if you need. Sometimes you need to adjust the distance between the feet and the hands, maybe inhaling all the way, lifting up the tailbone, all the way to the balls of the feet, and then exhale. See if you can just slowly lower those heels towards the mat. And eventually, you might find yourself in less of a U shape and more of a V shape. But eventually, and keep a bend to the knees if you need, eventually will lengthen through the back of the legs. Okay, one more inhale. Look to the eyes with the look to the hands with the eyes. Bend the knees deeply, and we'll walk the hands to the back of the mat to our fold. Once more, fully exhaled here. Lengthen for half lift. Lengthen through the legs, from the tailbone to the spine and crown of the head, from the tailbone to the heels, and then exhale back to the fold. Engage the core. Press it into the feet. Inhale, come up, your choice. But either way, inhaling with an engaged core all the way back up to our mountain, hands above the head. Reaching, exhaling, hands down, heart center, and finally down to the side. And hopefully you're just a little warmer. You might feel a little more of each of those major joint areas getting maybe not as snap, crackle, poppy and as dry as before, but now we're going to be moving into balance in our standing position, and we'll use the actual pose of chair. Not a chair, but the pose for chair. So standing here, and it's a great time for some water, so let's go ahead and get a little break there. But in our chair, all you have to do is stand in your square foot mountain and think about shifting that weight so that you have like a little square box from heel to toe, from side to side. And then we're going to think about our internal rotation of the knees. I'm going to start from a side perspective, and then I'm going to turn around just so that you can see, but keep your area there. You have a choice of wide-legged stance chair, as well as a more narrow stance of chair where you zip up the inner arches, the thighs, all the way up. It's like having a cobra tail. So you have this internal rotation of the thighs. You can almost feel as if you're rolling up to the balls of the feet, and your heels should be able to lift with just slight compression in the leg. That's more challenging. So if you'd like to do that from the beginning, if that's a part of your practice, you can. But you can also start with just hips distance apart feet. And again, as you're settling your square foot mountain stance, you can bend the knees, you can roll on the soles of the feet. You can just see how the base is. And once you find that you can lengthen through those legs, see if you can tuck under the tailbone. If you have an anterior tilt this way, let's see about tucking under the tailbone, pressing through those legs to lengthen. And as we do that, more of your hips should just gently press forward. You should feel more of a stacking feeling so that your hips are right above the knees, that gentle tuck of the chin and tailbone so that the spine can just sit right into the pelvic bowl, shoulders just right above those hips. And as you're there, engage the core once more. See if you can just engage those muscle sets, that muscle set right there at the perineum. We're going to inhale, press into the feet. See if you can lengthen and just lift up just slightly those heels. Just see about that, and then roll back down. That hopefully will set the muscle, activate the muscles that you need here. We're going to inhale the arms up And as you're reaching upwards, I encourage you to press downwards. So you almost have this opposite like energy. You're lifting up the arms as you're really rooting down into the feet. And then we're just going to, at this point, start to bend the knees slowly, tucking under the tailbone so that you're essentially just bending the knees so the center of gravity is just right over your heels. In our first version of tree, and your arms don't have to be vertical like this, they can be out at a tangent, but at this point, when you're in your first iteration of chair and your hips are down, you're going to control the amount of challenge here. The lower you bring down your center of gravity, your tailbone, the more you bend your knees, the more challenging it will become. Hopefully, the lower you get in your chair, you'll have an internal rotation more to help you feel like you can once more roll up to the toes. But wherever you are, as it takes about 3 to 5 breath cycles to get to your first edge, you might be in a deep chair. You might be just here, just tucking under the tailbone. Maybe you've never done that before. You can put your hands at the hip line there and just gently tuck under by bringing your hands into these C shapes and just tilting them back and forth, just like that. And as you find more of a tucking under of the tailbone, a bringing in so that your tailbone is tucked under, you can bend through the knees and feel that center of gravity right over your hips. And internally rotate those thighs. Engage the thighs. See if you can lift up on the toes. And hopefully if you look down, your knees and your toes are in that same alignment, but your knees are kind of a little back so you can see your toes. All right, so with the next inhale, we're just going to lengthen, panticulate. That means just lengthen through your legs, lengthen all the way up through your fingertips. See if you can lift up through the sternum even, lifting upwards. Your shifting of the center of gravity at the soles of the feet should go closer to the toes, to the balls of the feet, as you lift up higher. And then exhale, bring the hands back down to center, and hopefully you feel just a little more rooted. Now, we're going to do one more chair with our legs at hips distance apart. You can lift up the arms, and you can have them out at a tangent. You can have them up above you. This time we're going to inhale and bend the knees gently, hinging at the hips as we need to just lower down. And as we come into that chair edge that we can deal in a comfortable, steady manner, start to shift the weight from the heels to the balls of the feet. See if you can lift up at the heels and then hold it wherever you can. Engage the glutes, engage the core, reach up with the fingers. Take a deep breath. Take a deep exhale out. One more inhale up. And then exhale, lower the heels and lift up with the legs and the torso. Bring hands down heart center and let them just rest there. You can shoulder stretch, alternately roll one back and then the other. You can move them from side to side. And that's really facilitated by a movement at the hands, at the wrist as well. But you can do whatever it takes to release from that last pose. Now we're going to do another chair, and this time you can do it with the hips apart as well, especially if chair is not a part of your practice and that was challenging. But if it was just fine for you and you want a little more challenge, then I encourage you to bring your feet together into that cobra tail. And you know, if your knees are knocking outwards, it's been a long time since you've had a zipped up leg, it might feel uncomfortable and really tight, but we want to start with bent knees just slightly, and then we can feel that toe in a slight internal rotation right at the thighs. And then we're going to inhale the arms up once more. And now I'm going to, turn to the side once more so you'll see that, hopefully. You might have, again, the hands at vertical or more of a tangent off of the body. But now we're going to slowly just hinge at the hips. And this time, feel your inner thighs moving in towards each other. And as you're bending at the knees, you should still feel that rotation so that you're zipping up the legs. And if you can imagine engaging the core and activating your glutes to help you keep this stance so it's not so taxing on your shins. But give yourself a good deep inhale, reaching out through the arms. And if you start to feel a little bit of tension here, see if you need to tuck under the tailbone, round out the lower back some. And then make sure when you look down that you can see your toes. And that constant internal, just gentle zipping up of the legs. Engaging the core. And once you've had your 3 to 5 breaths to find your sweet spot, I encourage you to take 5 good deep breath cycles using the ocean breath. Inhale is great to lengthen, find energy entering through the nose. Exhale, see if you can just sit a little deeper into the heels. Lift the toes, and you shouldn't feel any change in your center, hopefully. One more deep exhale. And then we can inhale to lengthen through the legs, tucking under the tailbone, reaching all the way up. And then exhale, hands down heart center, down to the side. Give yourself a moment here. We're going to go one more chair. And if you can, roll up to your balls of the feet, to the toes. With this last cobra-like chair, you're welcome to do so. Otherwise, you can just continue where you are. So we can inhale the arms up. Exhale, just bend at the knees. Feel that gentle tuck out of the tailbone. And you can tuck under if you need, if it got to be a little too much on the lower back. Make sure you're zipped with your legs. Inhaling, we're just going to slowly start rolling the weight from the heels to the balls of the feet. See if you can lift the heels, keeping your legs zipped. Engage your core. You can always bring down your arms too if you're done with the shoulders. You can keep your hands at heart distance, at prayer hands at the heart. And if your legs start to separate, zip those ankles together, zip the arches together, and then we'll go ahead and let the arms down slowly, let the heels down, and then inhale, lengthen through the legs. Up through the sternum, roll those shoulders up, back, and down. Exhale fully here. Feel like you're just rooting in. All right, and then we're going to come into our squats. So if you have your blocks nearby and you want to come into your squat by a forward fold and just getting into the squat that you like to do, you're more than welcome to. I'm going to bring a chair over. If some people need a chair to help facilitate blocks, but making your way down to the floor, we're going to hopefully have a transition. Now, I always recommend we're hinging at the hips to reach downward. So having blocks, if you're not able to meet the floor, is one thing. So we'll start with the chair. And just having the chair nearby. You can probably have the back of the chair right next to you or the seat, just whichever works better for you. But we're going to be about hips distance apart with our feet. And we're just going to do that same sort of motion, making sure that we've got that gentle internal rotation. And as we start to bend at the knees, sticking the butt back just slightly, and then we can just lower down. Your hands might be at the seat, making your way downward, but we're hopefully with some sort of blocks nearby, because some of us may then be able to go down a little lower. But if you're here at the chair and this is about as far as you can go, you might need to have the blocks assisting you. Maybe they'll be under the hips, maybe they'll be under the heels as you make your way down to that squatting position. But if you're down to the floor, eventually we want the hips and the heels to meet. And if you can slowly start to bring down the heels, that is up to you. And you can get into a deep, deep squat that way by lowering the hips downward. but I am not there. And if you're in any kind of squat for your practice, giving yourself about 3 to 5 breath cycles. And you can find some play. Usually it takes about 3 breaths to see if you have a little more space. You can do small, exploratory, slow movements to see if you're able to give yourself a little more stretch. It also is good if you find that you've gone a little too deep. It allows you that space to come back out and go back in with less intensity. Another thing you can do with the squat is bringing those blocks out in front. As we're making our way, you might eventually be able to bring knees together and rest the top of your shin on the blocks, and hopefully allow you to have a little less weight on the hips, on the heels. But this is a great way to also transition to our hero pose, which we will be doing in just a moment. So give yourself, once you've found your squatting position that you can maintain, just give yourself 3 good breath cycles there. Breathe in slowly. Imagine each inhale brings in energy, helps you to scan through the body, any tightness. With the exhale, maybe you'll find just a little more release. Oftentimes in the exhales, you may even be able to go a little further into your pose. And as we're ready to come out, so you can make that choice of sitting in the chair if you need, but we're then going into a hero pose. And if you're in the chair, not coming down onto the floor into hero, you'll just be sitting with your sits bones on the edge and bringing the knees together and the feet right underneath the knees. So here, we're going to be making our way to a hero pose. And again, you might need the blocks to help you move around. Allow your shins, the tops of the ankles, to support your weight as you move, lifting up through these arms. And then you can bring the tops of the shins to rest if that's available to you. You might have to tuck the toes, but here you may need a blanket, a folded blanket, a thin block to help the hips get to the heels. But eventually in our hero pose, we want to align the calves, the thighs, and have the sits bones directly on the heels. So your toes should be pointed straight back behind you. And you should just find a slight internal rotation of the thighs just to keep your legs together so they don't fall apart. You just want to keep the thighs together and keep your glutes just slightly active. You might find your calves are slightly active as a result, and that hopefully keeps the torso nice and balanced without dumping all this weight into the ankles. You want a slight activation of the upper body by the abdominals, all those muscles to help you stay upright with a little less weight bearing on the bottom, the foundation of your hero. Now here, if you can reach back, you can massage the big toes of the foot. You can, the ball of the foot where the big toe is. You can massage the inner arch. If you would like to do some sort of shoulder stretch at this point, we'll be staying in our hero pose for about 5 breath cycles after you've found that sweet spot. So if you have a strap, if you have blocks, whatever it is that helps you to sit in your hero pose, and you can always help your upper shoulders release by just simply gently holding the hands behind the sacrum. Inhaling, finding that length, lifting up through the sternum. You can bring the hands to rest in front of you, just cupping one hand under the other, palms up. And keeping your core engaged. Now to come out after your good 3 breath cycles to 5 to find it, and then your other 3 breath cycles to just enjoy it. We're going to use the blocks if you need to start bringing the blocks near your body so that you can press into them and help to lift up your hips. As you're doing this though, don't forget your shins. Your legs are there to do the majority of that work. And we're going to lift up And you can just slightly make some space between the knees. We're going to point the toes away just a little more. And this time, see if you can bring your hips inside your heels for a fixed fern position. And if you're just lucky to get the feet to separate while the knees are still near to each other, you can be there. But eventually, if you can't bring the hips downward, maybe on a folded blanket, maybe on a block, maybe by itself, you should be cradled by your heels at some point. And if you have great flexibility and internal rotation, you may eventually bring both sits bones between the feet. But again, we're working on that gentle internal rotation, getting a great opening at the knees, hip, tops of the ankles. And we're just trying to find comfort here. If you're finding like your knees are torqued and they're just not feeling good, you don't want to go that deeply. You can always lift up, bring in the feet a little more, and just do what you can where you can. And once that area has been identified where you're able to hold the pose for a good long while, see about sitting nice and upright, slight activation of the perineum, the core, so you're not dumping weight in there. And then you can think about maybe some stretches in the shoulders. Maybe something like the strap stretch where we use it to open up through the elbows. Maybe we're just happy if we can bring this left arm back behind us and grab a hold of that strap. Do what you can where you can. If you do one side, be sure to do the other. We'll be coming out of our fixed fern position in another breath or two. And a gentle tuck of the chin, lengthen through the neck, through the crown of the head. In our last one here, we're going to lift up. Again, if you can use your hands near your hips, your blocks near your hips, but you want to be close to your body's center of gravity so you can lift up, and you're using your shins, your legs. You're lifting up now and separating the knees, bringing the tops of the shins on. We'll be moving into a a child's pose, but here you might need a little time, tucking under the tailbone, bringing that internal rotation now outward, just slightly, straightening them out. Maybe the toes touch, maybe they don't, but now at this point, with that bit of space between the legs and the front now you're going to hinge once more, bringing the hips to the heels and doing what you can where you can. You might be in this position where you're just trying to get the hips and the heels to meet some point, while your knees are open, while your hips are in this abduction situation where they're moving away from the midline. And once you find that you can deal with that, usually takes about 3 to 5 breath cycles, finding out where your base is in our child's pose, and then we can relax in with the upper torso by just simply walking the hands downward wherever it is. And we're hinging at the hips until we stop. You're noticing how your knees feel here. You can always come out if it's a little too much. But eventually when you stop hinging, then you can relax the upper body. You might have your entire torso in between your thighs. You might have blocks, some sort of prop. I had a 2-foot thick bolster that I had to use for the longest time. So it just depends on where your child's pose is. But eventually, you're just resting your torso over your thigh. And as you approach your very last breath, we're going to come out by simply bringing the hands once more to either side of the knees, thighs. We're going to lengthen through the torso by straightening the arms, bringing up the torso, and then removing any blocks. We're going to bring the blocks to the side if you need. Bring that pressure downward with the arms so that you can lift up through the legs, pressing through the shins down on the floor so you can lift the hips, bringing the knees together. And then we're going to lift up onto the shins with the help of the blocks if you need, or just by walking up. And notice where your pelvic bowl orientation is. If there's still a tilt to it, see if you can start to lengthen, tucking under the tailbone. You might need to press into the shin bones, press into the tops of the ankles, and you're lifting up through the chest, bringing that tailbone under and bringing the hips just slightly forward. And now we're in our camel position. Hopefully we have a nice long upright torso. Our hips are in somewhat of an extended position, so it should feel really good, especially after all that flexion at the hips. And we're not dumping the weight into our knees, but balancing a lot of this upper body weight onto the shins, the tops of the ankles. One more deep inhale. See if you can lift up through the chest. See if you can bring those hands back behind you, either resting on the back of your backside, that flat side of the pelvic bowl, the sacrum, or maybe you can clasp the fingers. One more deep inhale, pressing down through the shoulders so you can lift up through the chest. And then exhale. We'll bring the gaze back to center. We'll release the hands. Use the blocks if you need, but we're hinging at the hips. Once more here, just pelvic tilting it back. And then we'll bring our hands down and start to shift the shins back so we can bring our belly down to the floor. Remove any props that might be in your way. We'll have just one more rest on our belly before we move into Shavasana. And you might have your favorite way of getting into Shavasana. Sometimes I like to go in just right over the mat, or you might go into a deer and then roll over to your belly. But as we're moving into our Sphinx position here, you might rest your head, your forehead on pillowed hands. If that's not too much for your shoulders, you might be resting just the face on the mat. It's a little more smushed this way, but that's all right. It's just temporary. You might have your cheek, apple of your cheek, resting on the mat. But as you just make this transition, give yourself a balance if you're on the cheek of the mat by gently pressing into the pubic bone, belly, the chest, so you can lift the head slightly and turn the gaze so that you rest on the opposite apple, cheek apple. And one more inhale, press into the chest, belly, and then you can bring the gaze back to center. And at this point, we'll just walk our fingers right under our shoulders, bring the hands close to the body, the arms close to the body, and we're going to start to inch the arms forward, elbows now underneath the shoulders. And give yourself a gentle roll side to side, just gentle. And you can lift the tops of the feet if you like, tap them gently, and then just let them relax. Let the glutes be relaxed. Toes are pointing away underneath the hip bones. And we're going to take the next inhale and just press into the forearms, the palms, the fingertips, all as one unit. Just press down all the way from the elbows to the fingertips. And as you're pressing down, you're just slowly going to pull forward the torso. Try not to activate anything in the lower body. Keep the tops of the shoulders nice and wide. And you're still looking down at the mat, maybe somewhere in between the thumb, hand area. Give yourself one more deep inhale. Press into the arms, fingertips once more. See if you can pull forward just slightly. And at the top of the inhale, just bring the gaze up just slightly. The neck is still in alignment with the angle of the top portion here. We're not looking off of the mat. And at this point, the tops of the shoulders should feel like they're moving in opposite directions to keep a nice wide opening at the tops of the shoulders, at the base of the neck. And if you feel your fingers are tenting, just press more of the palm towards the floor. And hopefully you're not going to be dumping the weight into the elbows, but allowing the forearms, palms, fingertips, all to evenly distribute weight One more deep inhale, and then an exhale. Slowly let the chest melt forward as the elbows move aside, out to the side, and you pivot the hands in. Backs of the hands can support the brow line once more. And then we're going to bring the backs of the hands, the arms down to our side. And bend your knees. Give your ankles a gentle roll. Alternate the direction. So move them slowly. Maybe one rolls and then the other one follows. And as you're doing those slow ankle rolls, you can stop and then make the opposite direction. Then roll them in the opposite direction and move slowly. Wiggle your toes. And then we'll gently release the legs back to the floor and make our way onto our back. Now, if you have a favorite way to do that, I invite you to do it. But sometimes I like to just lift an arm and roll over onto my back. Sometimes I have to do that in many different positions. But eventually rolling off of the mat and eventually inching shoulders, then hips, then shoulders, then hips, gently back onto the mat. But now that you're on your back, as we're moving into Shavasana, our very last pose of the practice, give yourself any movement that might help you make it flat onto the back. You might have that space under the lower back that needs some added support, maybe a folded blanket under there. Maybe you just need a little bit of time with gravity to let that eventually land where it's going to be. Your legs can be nice and long. You can have a cobra tail, and then let the feet peel away from each other and fall apart. Or you can just stretch them out towards the corners of the mat, opposite the wide leg stance. But hopefully your arms are away from the body, palms are up, and just let the body respond. You can hear noises, you can think your thoughts, and if you do, just acknowledge them and let them go with the next breath. And when you hear the 3 bells, we'll awaken. I'll be sitting up to mind the time. bringing the mind back to the body, taking note of sounds outside the room, and finally, back to the room, to the breath. Notice the air as it enters the nose, warmed as it exits the nose. Make any movements as you re-inhabit your body vessel. You can roll from side to side. You can wiggle the fingers, toes. You can have an overhead stretch, flexion and pointing of the feet. And as we make our way back to an upright seated position of your favorite choice, we'll end our class with a breathing exercise. And today's exercise, I would like to focus on your bringing your focus into the present moment as you come back to your more awakened state. One things to think about, just to help you center and get present, is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 meditation exercise that I've learned, where you can just sit comfortably on your sits bones, nice upright back, taking a deep breath. Just have your hands, maybe the palms up, just gently resting on your on your legs, your thighs. You can think of 5 things that you can see immediately. And you can have a soft, unfocused gaze somewhere and just notice in the periphery 5 things that you see. As you breathe deeply on the inhale, the pause, the exhale. You can think of your yogic breath allowing you just float on the ocean. After your 5 things that you see, you can think of the 4 things that you can hear. You might be hearing things outside the room. You might be hearing something inside the room. You might be hearing your heart beating. And then you can think about 3 things that you're touching right now. Maybe it's the towel under your feet. Maybe it's the sweater that you're wearing. And then you can think about 2 things that you can smell. And then finally, think about what you're tasting. Bringing hands to heart center. Thank you so much for joining us here at ACC's Community Room for Gentle Yoga at noon. I hope you have a wonderful day. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you, Jeani.
Yay.